welcome doctor with our bouquet.
There's so many chairs here. Why don't you come and sit here?
They're scared to ask questions. They're not like to back.
I'll help you. Thank you so much.
So Doctor, thank you very much for agreeing to do this on a Saturday. So one question that is going to come up from all those guys standing out there, right? And I'll give you the answer also, right?
Right.
The question is going to be, can I have a drink after this talk?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now they got straight.
Is the drinks around here?
So thank you again.
Not at all. Not at all. You're welcome.
Thank you, Sharman. All right, how many people here know doctor very well? All right, handful of people. Since many of you don't know doctor that well, I'm going to ask doctor a few questions before we start.
Right.
Is that okay with you, doctor?
Absolutely.
All right. So, first question.
Yeah.
I learned that you're from Kanpur. Can you tell a little bit about your upbringing, your early life, and what made you choose the medical profession?
Oh my God. So we come from a time when, there were three professions. Either you became a doctor, you became an engineer, or you became nothing. Anyway, I'm sorry about saying nothing, but then, see, I come from a village which is near a city called Etawah. My forefathers lived there, my father lived there. All my uncles studied and they went abroad. My uncles taught in Oxford and Cambridge and many other places. My father, of course, moved back into village. So I did not have any school education for almost till 9 years of age.
Okay.
We used to study at home. Then we moved into Kanpur, where obviously we started. I went to a very, very basic school in the beginning. That was Hindi medium. And somewhere around 8th standard, my father shifted me to IIT Kanpur. Used to be a central school. And I was so embarrassed that I couldn't understand English at that time. And I said, no, I can't study here. I came back and went to a school which was Hindi medium at that time, St. Francis. So I did my schooling from St. Francis, then I got into medicine. It took a lot of effort to get in, and still it's very tough to get in, and I think that's one reason if you see young people, they're moving away from medicine, which is a bit of a disappointment for all of us, because we don't get good quality students now. I did my MBBS from Kanpur, and my MD, which is a degree in medicine. Then I did my DM, which is the doctorate in medicine, we call it DM, it's a super specialty course. Medicine came to me in the sense that because my father said that, okay, there was nobody in the family as a doctor, and I chose a profession, and I kept moving during the profession. There was not much of hindrance in choosing the subject. Cardiology was something which was available to me because of a certain level of standards you maintain during your undergraduate education. So you got the cardiology, and then I went to US for a certain period of time, worked in Houston at the medical center for some time, came back to England, and that was Scotland, beautiful city, Edinburgh. Lived there, came back to Bangalore. No, they came back to India, and I actually met one, while I was in England, Dr. Jose Periapuram. He used to be a cardiac surgeon working in Cardiff at that time. And he called me that, are you wanting to move to Bangalore, to India? I said, yeah. He said, why don't you come to Cochin? And I went to Cochin, and I was supposed to join, and a lot of people will know Medical Trust Hospital in Cochin. I was supposed to join that place. And I came in June, then he said, can you join in July? I said, okay, fine. Then when July came, he said, can you join in August? I thought, something's not right. Bangalore used to be, my uncle's place. So I happened to come here, and I went all around. Everybody refused that, no, we don't have a space, we don't have a space. But then St. John's Medical College Hospital had a vacancy, and they said that you could join as a consultant. So I came here in 1995, and I was a faculty at St. John's Medical College Hospital in cardiology for almost 7 years. And then one day, I got a call from Dr. Shetty, who was wanting to move from Calcutta because he had a big hospital. He established what he calls a big Birla hospital there. And he moved into Kanpur and he said that I'm making a hospital. He was at the Manipal at that time. He said that, would you like to work? And he said, yeah. So he said, I'll pick you up from home. And I remember that he drove into, probably with a driver, there used to be a Qualis. He came in and brought me and showed me the hospital, and that was 2001. So we've been in Narayana since then.
Wow. Thank you, Doctor, for sharing your illustrious career. Next question, how many people here know Doctor's family? So can you please introduce your family?
I have my wife, of course, Sangeeta. We call it Gitu. I never called her Sangeeta, by the way. My daughter Savni, and my son works for Dell in Austin, Texas. He's married. So right now we have 4 of us, 5 of us actually.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice. Thank you. Sangeeta, you should find a seat here. Behind every successful man, there's a strong woman. So,
You stand behind.
so how long have you been practicing cardiology?
Well, so I graduated medicine, which is what you call as MBBS, in the year 1983. I completed MD in 87. I completed my DM in 91. So since I completed DM, which is 91, I became a cardiologist. So 5 years of more training. After doing your specialty program, 5 years or more of training, which is again 5 years. Since 95, I became a consultant.
Okay.
Prior to that, basically training.
And how many cardiac surgeries have you done?
Well, I do interventional cardiology, which means that we do interventions going from any part of the body, including your legs, your hands. And basically, these are coronary interventions, which you will come across, what coronary intervention means. I also implant valves. I'm one of the implanters in the southern India, probably the largest in southern India. We implant valve in the leg nowadays. So we are reaching towards doing a lot of things which you can do without surgery. So interventional cardiologist's job is to do interventions without cutting. So we do everything without cutting.
All right. Thank you so much, Doctor. So one other last question I had was, I've seen a lot of videos of you with Dr. Shetty, and so I think you alluded to your association with him. So anything else you want to talk about? What makes you stay with Narayana?
Well, one good thing about Narayana is also a private hospital. It's a private limited company now. It has shares in the market. And they look at their EBITDA, they look at their return every week, every day. They look at the amount of work. They have 28 hospitals. So they're like business. But one thing which I appreciate about the hospital, they never force people to do things, at least in this organization. So if you see, there's a lot of, a kind of an attitude with the doctors where they force people to do things. They scare them. That if you don't do, something will go wrong with you. We don't do that. That's one thing, and we don't treat people unnecessarily for sure. So if you need surgery, we do surgery. If you don't need surgery, we don't do surgery. If you need an angioplasty, we do otherwise say you can go and be on medication. So you develop a credibility, and I think I'm proud of that. That the hospital has a certain credibility, and that's why people come to it. And I must appreciate that Dr. Shetty is very, very keen that we should not lose that. We don't give kickbacks to the doctors who refer patients to us, which is another good point about it. And there's no sort of pressure from the hospital to do things unnecessarily, which a lot of corporate hospitals do.
All right, so with that, I'd hand over to Doctor to go through his talk. I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and more importantly, thank Doctor for his time Saturday evening. Thank you.
Interest in going and developing some kind of an understanding where we actually work toward prevention of heart disease. And I have something in my mind that I will probably ultimately move more towards that rather than doing interventional cardiology, which of course you can do up to a certain age. After that you may have to stop, like the surgeons stop working at a certain time. One disadvantage I have, that good that there is no dinner after this. I do a talk, many times people are shunned eating. I just try to tell you one story before I start, that there was a lunch at home or a dinner at home, and a lot of people came, and then somebody started asking questions people do that. What's a good diet, what is good this, what is good that. And usually I start, so when I start, then all kinds of stories you will tell about what's not a good food, what is a good food. And reach the point of eating sugars and eating, because the last thing which you do is dessert, and people wait for that. And that day nobody ate dessert. So before I moved on, how to prevent heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, which are the curse of modern day life. Before going into that, what humans are basically biological machines made out of about 2 million types of proteins and running on the energy of ATP converted from glucose and fats. And I think, how many people are from science, biology background here? Yeah, most of them are. So, see, our body cells use glucose to provide energy. And that energy we use to survive and function. Now, what are the components of this machine? Of course, we eat, that is your digestive system. It's good for children to understand what the eating does. So we eat nutritious food or nutrition which goes through our alimentary canal. The digestive system breaks into smaller components and gets absorbed. So the nutrient and water, salt, can I use the...
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. The nutrients, water, salts which you absorb is then picked up from the digestive circulation, from the blood vessels which are around the intestine. And it gets absorbed, it goes through the circulatory system. So circulatory system is what? Is the system which is the heart is made up of. The heart is a pump which is pushing blood which contains all your nutrients, all your glucose, all your hormones, all your enzymes, and it is throwing through a network of pipes which are going all over your body. So there is a big, this phone is ringing, so I'll put it off for that. From the heart, there's a tube coming out which is throwing blood to your carotids, which go into your brain, to every part of your body. So the blood is reaching with every beat of the heart to every part of the body. So that system, which is what is called a circulatory system. So when you, and whatever is actually not needed, the cells use the circulatory system, where the cells use this blood which carries the nutrients across it. Take away the glucose. The glucose is the fuel of the cell. It produces energy, and the cell's waste product is collected into the blood and taken out through the body. And where does it come from? Your kidneys. Your kidneys excrete the product of metabolism. So the cellular function, or the function of the cell, is to metabolize, produce energy, or keep it a bit lower, produce energy for the cells to use, and the waste product is taken away from your urine, through the renal system, which is called as the renal system, or the urinary system. Now, to do this job of cellular function, or eating energy, you require oxygen. Where does the oxygen come from? Oxygen comes from your lungs. So you breathe oxygen in and you breathe carbon dioxide out, because in the process of metabolism, when the cells are using this glucose, you produce carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is thrown out of your respiratory system. So you're breathing air in, which is taking the oxygen is then going into the blood and is supplied to the cells. The cells use the oxygen to convert glucose into energy, and this is what is going on. So the whole system, the whole mechanism of this body is working in the major part of this machine. So there is circulatory system, which is what I am concerned with. There is, of course, the brain, which is the top of everything, and I might tell you that the brain controls everything. This is the boss sitting at the top. And how it affects our bodies is also important to understand. Maybe I will touch in the end that everything starts from here. Now, what are the common diseases you come across? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to spend time in the 3 most common diseases. I'm going to tell you about what is heart attack,
why heart attack happens, what goes wrong, why these arteries of our bodies become diseased, and how can we reduce this process. Because most of us, 70% of the people who have disease or who die at a certain age die of heart disease, most of them. Heart disease is the most common disease in the universe or in this world. So if you can prevent it, and it's a preventable disease, the good news is it's a preventable disease. The fortunate part is that it is preventable, but the unfortunate part is that we recognize it very late. And mind you, it's good that children are sitting here. The disease starts very early in life. It actually starts first decade. You can see fat deposits in a baby after birth. So that most of the disease in the body starts when about 10 to 15 years of age and gradually progresses to reach around, say, so somebody who starts at 10 will manifest it by 40. Somebody who starts at 30 will manifest it by 60 and 70. Most commonly, men manifest early than women because nature has protected. Why? Because nature they have to produce children. So all ladies who are menstruating continue to be prevented from developing disease. They stop menstruating. But there is a disadvantage of working women and diabetic women get it early. So women are naturally protected from heart disease and men are not. So I'm going to talk about cardiovascular disease. Now what do you mean by cardiovascular disease? Disease of the cardiac, which is the heart, and the vessels are the vessels which come out of it. So cardiovascular disease, and then we talk about CVA. CVA means cardiovascular accident, which leads to stroke, which leads to paralysis. And of course, other vascular diseases like the blockages in the arteries of the legs. So people who have blockages in the arteries of the leg, when they walk, they will feel pain in their legs. And of course, the two most common things which are called the most important risk factors are hypertension and diabetes. Now, unfortunately, we are getting more and more young hypertensives. And we are getting, of course, more and more diabetes. This country, especially this part of the Southeast Asia, is considered to be the diabetic capital of the world. And there is a reason for that. And I probably will touch upon that, why there are more diabetics in this country. Now, what is heart disease and how it affects us? And why there is so much of heart disease? This is the second question. What is heart attack? What is angina? What are the symptoms of heart attack? How is the heart attack treated? And is there any way to reduce the chances of heart attack? So there are certain risk factors for heart disease. We call heart disease a multifactorial, or there are multiple risks for heart disease. And as I said, that men are more prone to it, men more than 45, and women more than 55. Although in our country, we are seeing more and more people who are younger than 30. In Jayadeva Hospital, somebody was telling me that in one night or in 124 hours, they get at least 5 heart attacks who are less than 30 years of age, which is very, very, very disappointing. So why this is that we as a country are becoming more prone to heart disease and diabetes. Then of course, as I said, men are more prone, that way we call it sex. Of course, certain races are more prone to heart disease, probably Asians are. And of course, some genes we carry, although I don't believe it completely, because see, if you look at what are your genes, according to me, genes are nothing but your socio-cultural environment. What your parents ate, their parents ate, their parents ate, has carried on into generation as a type of food. So one community, one community of one family, their family has carried certain genes because of certain way of their eating habits, certain way of their thinking, certain way of their cultural environment, certain social environment. That is carried on in your body, and that becomes your gene. Mind you, if you guys have any questions, I can stop and ask some questions. We'll talk about that. We'll go to that. Alcohol is always something which has a lot of interest, and I give this talk, so there's enough time for that. So high cholesterol, of course, is a very common condition. There's a lot of misgivings which is going on in the WhatsApp and in the media that cholesterol is no more important. No, it's not true. Cholesterol is still very important. Yes, there is this understanding that the fats are not so important. It's the sugars which is important. So meat eating is not bad. I'm not saying that you start eating meat if you're a vegetarian. Vegetarian protein is better than animal protein, provided you eat protein. Now, if you're a vegetarian, it's difficult to eat that 1 gram per kg body weight of protein because it requires 70 grams. I'll tell you how much a dal contains. Dal, the tur dal, has about 13 to 14% of its weight as protein. How much dal you can eat? You can eat probably 50 to 60 grams of dal in one katori, and the 13% of that will be what? About 6 grams, 7 grams at the most. One egg contains yellow, without the yellow, about 6 grams of protein. So egg is a good source of protein. Fish, 75% of its weight is protein. Then chicken, about 60% weight is protein. Milk, 18% of weight is protein. So milk is not a bad food, provided you get a good milk. That's a problem. The Nandani milk which you get is probably not a good milk. I don't agree with that because it's mixed with powders. There are, of course, now a lot of interest in organic food, and I think somebody said there is somebody coming tomorrow or today for, you know, Sibulal's farming house. There was some message on WhatsApp. That's tomorrow. I think one should look into growing their own vegetables. This is something which all you guys should think about, because in our house, I'm just diverting a bit. In about, say, I would say, a space of about, say, 15 by 10 square feet, you grow so many things. You can grow tomato, you can grow cucumber, you can grow ridge gourd, you can grow bottle gourd, a lot, you go spinach. So you need to have some space for yourself because you cannot afford. Think about eating organic food, and I'll come to that a bit later. Smoking, of course, this is the most important thing, which is irrespective of heart disease. And this is totally preventable. A smoker, the risk of heart disease is 3 times. A diabetic, the risk of heart disease is 3 times. But if a diabetic smokes, his risk is 16 times. So if you have 2 risk factors, they become exponentially more risky for you. So if you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, and you smoke, and you have diabetes, there is a study called Interheart study, which I might quote, in which they looked at 9 risk factors. So if you have, yeah.
You said egg white is good and dal is less. What are the other typical vegetarian things that will
So all the rajmas, all the beans, all the even paneer is not bad. The Nutella, the soyas, the tofus, they're all good sources of protein.
paneer is actually a good
Paneer is not a bad source. People have done because it contains fat as well. That's not a bad part of it. But paneer is not a bad source because it contains protein. It has protein and fat in it. But fat, as I said, is not bad. I'll quote one study which is published in Lancet last year, September. Huge study done by a gentleman called Dr. Salim Yusuf, product of Bangalore, works at McMaster in Canada. He's a kind of a revolter. So he is somebody who comes out with studies. He did some 280,000 people, 27 countries. This study. I'll quote it. Quote that study. High blood pressure, of course, is important. And what is high blood pressure? Diabetes is the most important. We consider diabetics as already high pressure, and that is an important thing. So if you become a diabetic or you have a propensity to become diabetes, you have to look after yourself very, very well. You have to change your lifestyle. You cannot eat the food which has made you bring you to become diabetic. You have to change your lifestyle, and that's the most important part. We cannot continue to eat what we are eating, which has caused us to become what we are. That's important. So it is very, very important. There has to be a significant lifestyle modification for people who have diabetes. Obesity, of course, is very important. Alcohol is not positively related. Alcohol is linked. That means people who drink a regular amount of alcohol, small amount of alcohol, the risk of heart disease is actually not high. Although there is a data which came just about 3 to 4 weeks ago that it creates other problems, and that is a problem. Heart disease is not a bad thing. And physical inactivity. Those people who do not exercise, the risk of heart disease is equal to smoking. It's very, very important that all men and women should invest in themselves. Like I say that, but they say I don't have time. When you have time for work, you have the time for yourself to look after people. When you look after yourself, you live longer, you work longer, you earn longer. But if you don't do that, you stop doing that. So it's very, very important that all of us, especially those who can afford and should exercise. And it's very important from the very beginning to do that. Use for children, it's important for children. So physical inactivity is the sedentary lifestyle is a risk factor for heart disease. Sure.
How much of alcohol is good?
I'll talk about it. It's asking a question, how much of alcohol is good? I will answer it. So this is an interesting study. I quote it. It's a scientific document, but then you can read about it. A global case-controlled study of risk factors for acute myocardial infarction. So what they did, and it was conducted when I was in St. John's, so we were part of that study, that they look at people who come with heart attack in the hospital. What are their risk factors? Those who already have suffered a heart attack. And they looked at these 9 risk factors: smoking, lipids and cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, diet, physical activity, alcohol consumption, and psychological factors. Mind you, stress is a very important part of illness. Not only heart disease, but illness as a whole. And they found that you can account for 90% of patients who come with heart attack, they have risk factors. And they also looked at something called ApoB and ApoE1 ratio, which are markers which are becoming more and more important in predicting heart disease, and we look at them now in people. And the LDL-C cholesterol, which is the cholesterol which is called as low-density cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol. They were the more important risk factor, followed by smoking. 9 risk factors combined accounted for basically all the risk of AMI, acute myocardial infarction, in the study population. It's truly startling and unanticipated results. This came in the year 2004. So, I think all of us know, we know that about this, isn't it? We all know about it. This is a bit of a marker which we pick up in this, like an apolipoprotein. It's a kind of lipoprotein which is like cholesterol, which is in your blood, which goes up, and the ratio.
You don't get tests that show that.
You do get tests now, it's available. Now, why diabetes is becoming important, and you look at this slide, and this slide is a prediction from year 2000 to 2030. Now look at Southeast Asia there. In 30 years, there's a 155% increase in diabetes in this country. And India is the most important. The incidence of heart disease, for example, in the US has come down. Now, why we are becoming more prone to diabetes? And I have a theory about it. And this theory actually probably substantiated by another talk I heard about why our country goes through a cycle of patterns of availability of food. And there is monsoon, which brings rain, which brings a good crop, which brings a good food. Economies go up and down. If there is no rain, the economy of the country is down. And we get a lot of abundant food. So we have this gene in our body, which is called as thrifty gene. How many people have heard about this thrifty gene? What this gene does is that because there is a cyclical, imagine human race living in this country 500 years ago, and we've been living here thousands of years ago. So we have a propensity to collect fat in our central part of the body. Most of the Indians, and that too also because of the carbohydrates. So we collect fat in the abdomen, and we collect fat here. Our arms are thin. And there is a genetic reason for that. The genetic reason is that there is a structure called omentum around your intestine, and that is the most important endocrine organ in our body. The omentum tends to collect fat. The reason being that imagine this cyclical pattern of availability of food. If there is abundance of rain, there's abundance of food, so the humans used to eat a lot, and that used to get collected in your abdomen. And when the next year comes, by the time the food is gone, everything is dry, and suppose there is a drought, you use this energy which is accumulated here. So the thrifty genes allows you to collect fat in your central part of the body. And that's why we have paunches. And also it's because that when you collect the fat, the momentum, puts a lot of glucose, and the glucose and a combination of protein, and they call it proteoglycans in our bloodstream. These proteoglycans are damaging to you. Not only that, when there is too much of carbohydrate in your system, you need a lot of insulin. Now, insulin's job is to transfer glucose into the cell. So when you eat food, the glucose goes in, gets absorbed, goes into the blood, and the glucose has to enter a cell from the blood. That transportation of glucose into the cell is done by insulin. And mind you, glucose comes from what? Carbs. The carbohydrate gives you glucose, because that is ultimately every carbohydrate is broken down to glucose. So if you have eaten a lot of carbs, there's a lot of insulin which has to be secreted. And because of these proteoglycans, you get insulin resistance. You get a lot of insulin, but the insulin doesn't work. So what happens is pancreas secretes more insulin. So first of all, you're eating too much of carbs, and then your body is becoming resistant to insulin. So what will happen to the poor pancreas? It will last for a certain time, and they'll say, I cannot produce now this hormone anymore, which is insulin. And then that is what is diabetes. So we load our systems with carbs, and we have a propensity to have this thrifty gene, which collects the fat here, which causes, there's another substance called adiponectin, which is a chemical substance secreted by the momentum, which gets reduced in the system. Now, what happens is that this lack of insulin resistance, this appearance of proteoglycans, they start damaging your vascular tree, and that produces the narrowing and thickening of the arteries. Now let me jump to that now. The obesity which you see, which is called as the apple-shaped paunch, is bad obesity. And most of Indians are like this. It's also common in southern part of US. You know, the Native Americans, they were the worst sufferers of diabetes. 70% of the Native Americans are diabetic. You know why? Because they changed their life in the last 200 years. 200 years ago, they were hunter-gatherers. They were on the horses. When the whites came to the US, they killed them, first of all of them, and they made everything to become cities. They had to migrate from their dwellings into cities, and there was a huge change in their lifestyle. They started eating energy-rich food, and that is a problem. When we eat energy-rich food, we develop more disease, we develop more hypertension, we develop more diabetes. And 80% of the Native Americans have diabetes, and they have the highest incidence of heart disease in US, the Native Americans. Asians who go there have highest incidence. The Japanese who go, Japanese is a low incidence of heart disease. When they go to migrate to US, they have a very high incidence of diabetes. So this sudden change in their lifestyle is important for you to develop, because they start eating a lot of energy. And you know how people eat in US. If you go to a restaurant, the kind of servings you get are huge, and they're all eating bad food. I can tell you this thing. Our children are copying them, and that's a problem. Our children are eating all these trans fats. Processed food is bad for you, is definitely bad for you. And if you don't look after your children, our children are becoming obese now at 15 years of age. Because, you know, you have a facility to play. Children don't play, they spend more time on devices. One more thing which is going to happen to people is, along the next 5 years, you will see people complaining upper body and neck pain. Because everybody's watching mobile phones like this now. So this part will strain, and the heights will come down. The posture will change. So these are all effects of modern day technology. Anyway, you were asking something.
What are
Trans fats are fats when you heat the oil, you cook it, you cool it, and you heat it again. You develop trans fats. Any fat which is solid at room temperature becomes kind of a trans fatty acids. Trans fatty acids are used to preserve food. There is no regulation of trans fats in this country. There is regulation of trans fats in other countries who are developed. They have become very strict about, especially European countries. They don't allow trans fats in their preserved foods. If you buy, for example, popcorns which have butter in it, that's trans fat. So all those popped stuff which you eat, put it into microwave and heat, that's full of trans fats. You shouldn't eat it. You shouldn't allow your children to eat it. It's better to eat corn rather than this best. You know, that's bad. So whatever you buy from hot chips, they're doing the same thing. So they're heating, and when you cool down, it develops trans fats. It becomes oxygenated. The fatty acid becomes more and more oxygenated, and that becomes trans fat. And trans fat is responsible for causing heart disease. Now, diabetes causes the most causes of mortality in patients with diabetes. 55% die with heart disease. Stroke, which causes stroke of the brain, about 10%. Then diabetes itself kills about 13%. Then they develop malignant neoplasm, which is cancer, infections, and of course others. But the biggest chunk, heart disease, is caused by diabetes. In our hospital, 70 to 80% of the people have diabetes who come with disease. In rural settings, the incidence of diabetes is about 15%. In urban settings, that's about 20%. But 40% of urban dwellers have impaired glucose tolerance. Either they are pre-diabetic or their ability to metabolize glucose is not there. The insulin is already becoming resistant. 40%, that means 10 out of 4, 4 out of 10. Now what will happen? I say that cardiologists will have a huge time in this country, but there's a lot of scarcity of doctors in this country, first of all. But then you can prevent it, and that's the most important part. Now, so what is atherosclerosis? How many people know the term atherosclerosis? Raise your hand. Yeah. So atherosclerosis means thickening of these arteries and deposition of this plaque. You see this, this is the material which gets deposited. This is a normal artery there, and this is a thickening artery. So this material which starts getting deposited in your arteries has a certain process, and that process is the one which causes atherosclerosis. Now, why it happens, we can take a full lecture on that. We're more prone to it. We're getting more atherosclerosis. You get blockages in the arteries of the neck or head is because it's atherosclerosis. That causes the stroke. When you get the blockages in the heart arteries, it causes stroke, heart attack. When you get blockages in your leg artery, it causes pain in your legs. Yes.
Yeah. So suppose you have diabetes deposits, whatever exercise you have, that will not disappear. Once it's there,
you can stabilize, and that's important. I'm coming to that now. So this is a normal cut section of an artery. So it's got an inner lining, which is called intima. This is media, and this is adventitia. And inside that space, which is now white, with the background of the paper there, is blood. Now what is a plaque? So this is a plaque. So this material which is depositing inside starts growing from here. Now why it grows is because of the, and there are of course slides which I could have shown, I could probably share it some other time. But all this material which has come is in response to something called endothelial dysfunction, which I'll show you in the second slide. Now this plaque, if it is rich in fat, it is a soft plaque. But if it is not rich in fat, it is rich in fibers, it becomes. So anything which causes an abnormality in our body, the body tries to heal itself. When it heals itself, it produces tissue which are harder. For example, when you get injured, the healing takes place. The tissue which is called the scar is a hard tissue. The scarring takes place there also. If your plaque is soft, and you look at this lining, so this E is the intima, it is thick at some place and thin at some place. Now if there is a thickness and thinness when the heart is moving, there is a shear stress which is differential at these two different points. Now what happens to this plaque is that the plaque ruptures. burst open. When it bursts open, it exposes the content of the blood to this discontinuity of the internal wall of the artery. So it gets broken up and the blood clots there. The circulating blood will clot there, and that is what produces the heart attack. You may have a plaque which is sitting there for ages. If it never bursts, it can never cause a heart attack. What will produce? Because now the lumen has become small. You see the size of that passage, which is called as lumen, has become small. If the lumen becomes smaller, we call it narrowing. Narrowing is nothing but the narrowing of the lumen of the artery through which the blood is flowing. Now, if you have a narrowing of an artery in your heart, and you have to walk or you have to run, the blood cannot be provided to the muscle for the heart to work. And the heart will produce a discomfort in your chest. And that is what we call as angina. So angina is nothing but a discomfort which is brought about by exertion. And a lot of people feel this is my gas. There's no way the gas can ascend your chest. So anybody, parents, somebody feels a gas-like sensation in the chest, and they sometimes try to take the gas out. They feel it with relief. That is usually not a gas, and it should be investigated, and you have to prove it that it is not gas. That mostly is angina. Now, all of us get gas-like sensation because we eat food which causes more gas. People say, there's a lighter side of it, that there has to be a department of gasology in our country. All Indians form more gas. Yeah. Yes. Now, the heartburn is a kind of a burning sensation. That also is a very typical symptom of heart disease, provided you prove it, no, it's not. It's gas, it's acid. Sometimes people have reflux. The acid, you have a weak sphincter between the food pipe and the stomach, there's a sphincter. If it becomes weak, the acid tends to come up into your esophagus, and that burns, and that is called a heartburn. But heartburn can be a symptom of heart disease also. So some people get this sour, we call it sour irritation. Something comes out of your mouth, and then you burn the whole chest because it's acid. Stomach is nothing but hydrochloric acid, HCl.
How much time will it take to build this fat deposit?
I'm going to come to that. So these are the arteries of the heart. You see, this is a heart and this is an artery of the heart. Now if there's a blockage here and a blockage there, the flow downstream will get affected. And the muscle of the heart, which is this muscle, has to pump blood into the body. So if this muscle is not getting blood, suppose my hand doesn't get blood, hand will not be able to work. It will pain. Similarly, this muscle in the heart becomes deficient in blood when you exercise. So when people who get exercise, the same reason we do the stress test, the treadmill test. That we look at an ECG on rest, and we make the patient walk, and we make them walk on an incline. And if there is deficiency of blood going to the muscle of the heart, the electrical activity of the heart changes. You are all engineers. That you can pick up by an ECG, and that is a treadmill test. So if your ECG is normal, your echo is normal, your treadmill is normal, you're mostly okay. You may have coronary artery disease, but it's not significant. Now, so once the atherosclerosis develops, the heart arteries, it can cause angina, heart attack, and its complications. And as I told you, that this is the plaque. This is the inside of an artery. Starts from first decade, fatty streaks. From third decade onward, it starts becoming bigger. And the fourth decade has become larger. Now what happens is that if you look at this inner lining, it may have one spot which is thick and one spot which is thin. And there is a differential series stress. The nature of this plaque is very soft, and the heart is moving all the time. And in that movement, you suddenly do an angle. So what will happen when your anger happens? The blood pressure will go up. What is blood pressure? The heart will push the blood with a lot of force. And that plaque, which is a vulnerable plaque. So these plaques which have a potential to rupture are called as vulnerable plaques. So those people who are vulnerable people as well, so they have a very high fat-rich diet, mostly. And it's very common, they had a fat-rich diet last night, they had a lot of alcohol to drink, and they smoke like chimneys. So they have these, the vulnerable plaque has a potential to rupture more because of smoking. Smoking also causes something called as platelet adhesion. So when the plaque ruptures, which is what they try to show, you can't see it here, the content of this is yellow, is like fat yellow. It comes out. It comes out, it exposes itself to the circulating blood. The blood tends to clot, and the clotting will block that vessel, and you get a heart attack. Now, if you reach a hospital within a certain time, you can dissolve that clot. And that is what we give, the clot busters. We give clot buster thrombolytic therapy. Nowadays, we do angioplasty to these patients, that if they come to the hospital within 1 hour, you can actually save the heart attack completely. The problem with the heart attack is that once you damage, you have made the muscle suffer forever. Heart attack, if it happens and you spend 6 hours and not gone to the hospital thinking that I'll go tomorrow morning, you have lost that golden time. So it's important for people, if they complain of some discomfort, especially, and that usually happens around 2 o'clock in the morning. And people think, okay, I'll go tomorrow morning. That's bad. If anybody, any parents, any family feels that there is a discomfort in the chest, I'm feeling uneasy, I can't sleep, I've got gas in my chest, and he's restless, you better go to the hospital. Because if you go to the hospital, you do an ECG, you can confirm the heart attack, and you can save a heart attack. Now, once the heart attack happens, that muscle is damaged forever. So you've lost the power of the heart to pump blood. And if you damage more than 40% of the heart, you die at that moment. Most of the heart attack cause about 20 to 25% damage to the muscle. So larger heart attack will produce more damage, smaller heart attack will produce less damage. And what happens is that if the heart attack is small, the person says, no, I'm okay, I'm going home tomorrow morning. You don't want to get admitted, because there's no education for people. In a place like US, if you call a 911 and you have a heart attack, they have something called door to balloon time. That means from the door of the patient, how much time you take to open that artery. Most of the US has to limit it to less than 90 minutes. That's a requirement. Heavy meal, heavy drinks, alcohol on a weekend, you have a vulnerability, you have your fat, your cholesterol is high. The material inside looks like this. Let me just, you see this? This is a plaque. That thing and this lining is thicker there, thinner here. The artery is moving, it's like the breaking of a wire and thinner. Keep moving. It's a vulnerable point here. I don't have a pointy here. It's a vulnerable point somewhere around here. So when your blood pressure suddenly goes up, I tell a story. There was a young boy which came to me when I was working in St. John's. He was only about 32 years of age. He was going, in those days they were making the silk board. You may not know. The silk board was a fact, they were constructing it. And he had a fight with somebody, road rage. He shouted and fought with somebody. After half an hour he complained of chest pain. Went to the hospital, he had a heart attack. Now why? Because he had a vulnerable plaque. He shouted, and what does anger do? I can talk about it. And that's why I say don't get angry. He suffered a heart attack because he had a vulnerable plaque. It ruptured and he suffered a heart attack. Thankfully, he was young, he could be quickly taken to the hospital, we opened the artery and he was fine. So if you can establish the flow to the muscle within a certain period of time, the golden time is about 6 hours. If you open it within 1 hour, you don't suffer damage actually. It recovers completely. But if beyond 6 hours, the damage is permanent and you don't improve. Now, before I go further down, so this is the lining of the cell. You see the structure here? This is called an endothelium. Now this endothelium is the largest endocrine organ in the body, and it secretes an acid. Somebody tell me, children, what acid the endothelium secretes? Nitric acid, by the way. Nitric acid. You know nitric acid? And everybody knows. HNO3, nitrous oxide, nitric acid. And the nitric acid causes vasodilatation. Now what happens is that when you damage this endothelium, it produces gap junctions. It has holes in it. It's not well, it's not well painted. And the cells of the body enter inside. the LDL molecule, which is a low density lipoprotein, can invaginate inside and start accumulating underneath and start growing this block. And anything which enters in the cell wall will start to heal it. So the smooth muscle cells, which are sitting right here, the media has something called a smooth muscle cell. They are the healing cells. They produce a lot of collagen and they start to heal the process. Now, if your cell goes inside, the cells there eat that cell and collect a lot of fat inside. Macrophages collect, and the plaque starts growing slowly. Now, how quickly it grows will depend upon what is your propensity to grow. People who smoke, it grows faster. People who have diabetes, it grows faster. And once it is established, starting say from 10 to 20 years of age, it will take about 20, 30 years for it to grow. It will not grow in 1 week or 2 weeks. Although we have seen in certain patients who are young smokers, 30 years of age, they come with a heart attack, hardly any disease. One plaque rupture caused the heart attack, single vessel disease, most of the smokers. This endothelial dysfunction or the damage to this endothelium is subjected to stress as well. There's evidence that somebody who's chronically stressed, angry, jealous, has lack of compassion, has hatred to others, is more likely to get endothelial dysfunction. And that's why we say compassion, love, affection, caring about others. This all comes from our spirituality. Has a meaning there. Because it all starts from here. And I tell this story that why you get blood pressure? There's no reason people understand, but I understand. You know, there is a system in our body called flight and fright system. How many people know about the flight and fright? Yeah. So the flight and fright is an animal kingdom which we're animals, except that we are thinking animals. We also work like animals. We have procreation, we eat, we sleep. The flight and fright causes adrenal gland to secrete two hormones called adrenaline and noradrenaline, and they're responsible for causing increase in blood pressure, increase in your pulse rate, increase in heart rate, and your muscles are ready to fight. That is called a sympathomimetic system. There are two systems in the nervous system. Other is called as parasympathetic system, which is the opposite of that. The parasympathetic system, when it gets stimulated, it produces substances like serotonin, which is relaxing. So when you are angry, anxious, your sympathetic system is activated, and when you're not angry, you relax, your parasympathetic system is activated. And the responses of these two are pleasure and displeasure. When you're happy, there is more serotonin in the system. There is less of steroids in the system. So happiness is nothing but when you feel good about something, what actually is happening is that your body is secreting substances which are lowering your heart rate, which are making your eye pupils to relax, your body to relax, and there's no anxiety. So you feel a sense of comfort, and that is the sense of happiness. On the other hand, when you are stimulated, you have to go, you have to attend an interview, you're agitated, your hands will shake, somebody fights with you, you start shaking. That flight and fright, when you get activated, it increases your heart rate, increases your blood pressure, and people get constricted, and your muscles tremble. So that is an unpleasant feeling. And that is a sense of, and I'm not feeling happy, I'm not good about it, I don't like it. But like and dislike, pleasure and displeasure, happiness, not happiness, is all chemically mediated. So when you have a pleasurable feeling, you are having activation of parasympathetic system. And now, so the zebra is grazing, and a lion is trying to kill it. So there is activation of sympathetic system. As soon as he smells that there is a chase now going to happen, the zebra starts running, the lion chases, both flight and fright are activated, both sympathetic systems are activated. One is trying to kill, one is trying to run away, to save its life. He runs for a half a kilometer, and the zebra takes over, the lion gets tired, he stops. He said, no, this prey is gone. Zebra goes up, and he starts grazing again. 5 minutes before he would have been killed, no effect. We are not afraid. You do a road rage while traveling, you activated a sympathetic system, So whenever you have a thought which produces anxiety in you, worry in you, and imagine if you're doing it 24 hours a day. You're always waking hours and you sleep, then you say, I can't sleep. What's happening? You're acting, your flight and fight is always activated. And what it does is that it damages this endothelium. There's a data on that. Endothelial dysfunction will then predispose you to atherosclerosis, which I told you. It also causes healing. So if there is a damage, it will produce healing. And when the healing will take place, the healing is always associated with tissue deposition, which are hard. So what happens to physics, who know physics, the elasticity of the structure will come down. It will become more rigid. Now, if the blood has to go through this system, these arteries, which are affecting arteries, are in the smaller arteries, not the larger arteries. They are in your tissues. So they go into a state of contraction. And this tissue of the wall of the artery become more rigid. So if the heart has to pump through a rigid structure, it has to produce more pressure. A rigid structure requires more pressure to pass through. So your blood pressure goes up. So all this is happening as a part of a process which is a very slow process to develop. Now when it starts very early in life. As soon as I get a sense of me and you, or my toy, why did you take it? That's where the competition starts. And it goes on in life. So we create that state of anxiety from a very early childhood. And understanding this is important. Human beings have to understand this. And mind plays a big role in that. And I probably have a couple of slides on that. So I'll probably move on, otherwise it just keeps going on and on. So these endothelial cells get damaged, they produce the process of atherosclerosis. There's something called apoptosis. Apoptosis means programmed cell death. Every cell of our body changes. We are all different cells in the next 2 years. What we are, the cell structure completely changed. Millions of cells change completely. We're not the same human beings we were born with. The cells of the body are completely changing. You become a different structure, but the genetic structure remains the same. But the cells change, they become new. And this, of course, I showed you. Now, when this plaque, due to some reasons which are not very well understood at this moment, although we understand it quite a bit, bursts and exposes what lies inside it to the circulating blood. This blood, when it comes in contact with the burst plaque, starts clotting and can block the heart artery, causing a heart attack. And this is what happens. So there's a clot inside this. There's a ruptured plaque there. The clot is the clotted artery. You can dissolve this clot to save you from heart attack. And that is why you need to reach the hospital fast. Same thing shown there. And this artery got blocked in this person. So this portion got damaged, and that is a heart attack. The tissue of this structure will be no more participating in pumping. It will become a dead tissue. It will become like a parchment-like structure, and that is a heart attack. So what does one experience during a heart attack? Chest pain similar to angina, which I told you, but it lasts longer. There will be a feeling of compression in the chest. Usually is a painful compression, feeling of suffocation. You may sweat. There may be difficulty in breathing and may cause a collapse. 10% of the people die at home before even going on. So the bigger heart attack kills you if you have suffered an arrhythmia. Now coming to hypertension, and that is also one of the risk factors. The definitions of hypertension are changing. Now we call up to 120/80 normal.
So in the previous slide, we talked about sorbitrate. What does that do?
So what does sorbitrate do is, the sorbitrate actually doesn't do anything when you're suffering a heart attack. It tends to open the arteries. So if you are having angina, which is that when you walk a certain distance and you get heart attack, or you get a chest pain, you take a sorbitrate, the vessel dilates, the flow increases, and the angina recovers. But mind you, when you're sweating and you feel suffocated, you feel uneasy, do not take sorbitrate because it drops you down. It will reduce your blood pressure. So if you're sweating and you feel a bit, feeling very, very giddy, and the other thing is, the sorbitrate should not be taken standing, it should be taken always sitting.
And if you feel that it has helped you, spit it out. Because sorbitrate reduces, so it is no miracle medicine which people say, I carry a sorbitrate all the time. Sorbitrate is more helpful for people who have stable angina, which means they walk a certain distance, they will get a chest pain. So you have fixed arteries, they're not ruptured. Just the narrowing is there, so they cannot walk more than a certain distance. If they walk a certain distance, they will get some chest discomfort. If you use the sorbitrate, that discomfort will not come. So people who become, like we say, they're 70 years of age now and they have this disease which doesn't allow them to walk for a long distance. If they're supposed to walk, suppose they have to walk and go from here to, say, the park here. They can take a sorbitrate and they will walk better. But if they're having discomfort, they will walk better. When you're suffering a heart attack, it actually doesn't do anything, frankly speaking. It may actually drop your pressure and you collapse. You suddenly fall. So one has to be careful about it. Now the definition of blood pressure is changing. Elevated systolic blood pressure, systolically the top one, 120, 129, less than 80. This used to be a stage up. So that means they have created more blood pressure patients now. So they say if your blood pressure is above 140, you need to be treated. Your blood pressure is above 140, the lower one is above 90, you need to be treated. This is the current recommendation. Until 2 years ago, it was different. At stage 1, you need to have different lifestyle modification, which is to reduce salt intake, to reduce your weight, regular exercise, come to the ideal body weight, lose that punch. That's deadly. So what it does, high blood pressure, damage to arteries, deposition of cholesterol in arteries, heart disease and stroke. Now what is cholesterol? I'm trying to come to my end so that I give some time for the questions. So cholesterol is nothing, it's a carrier of fat. Cholesterol molecule carries fat because fat is also required by our body. We need fat. Fat is an insulating structure. It gives supplety to the skin. It's in between the cells, so the fat is also important. So cholesterol is nothing but carrier of fat, and there are good, bad, and bad cholesterol. For example, LDL cholesterol is considered to be good cholesterol. Sorry, bad cholesterol. HDL is good cholesterol, and then you have triglycerides, which are more common in diabetics and Indians. Saturated fats, hydrogenated oils. Now coming to about, I sort of wanted to jump from there. What is fat? And we can talk about it. The saturated fat was said to be bad, it's no more considered to be bad. It's the trans fatty acids. Any fat which is solid at room temperature is bad for you. Simple. Although ghee probably doesn't come into that. Even purified coconut oil is not bad. But too much would be bad. So coconut has been probably unnecessarily given a bad name. It is not so bad. But provided it is not adulterated. They mix a lot of things in coconut oil as well. Smoking. So I'm coming to how you can change all that, and then we will have some question and answer session. This is one thing you stop. You reduce the heart disease risk in 2 years to somebody who does not have heart disease. And it's bad for you, because it causes more heart attacks, early heart attacks, more strokes. So smoking is absolutely no for anybody. And all those people who are children, when do you start smoking? 14, 15, 16, peer pressure. If they listen to this talk, that what's going on, I can give a talk on smoking, how does it affect you? And they will never smoke. I can tell you this. If you're told about smoking, what it does to you, when you're just beginning to start to smoke, you will never smoke. Just that our education system doesn't allow that happen. Alcohol. In small amounts is beneficial, 1 to 2 drinks per day. Large amounts adds fat and calories, and the worst thing is with smoking, with drinking, people smoke. And they eat a lot of energy-rich food at that time. A lot of oily food. And that's maybe not good for you because you gain weight. 4 drinks per day, you end up with a gastroenterologist instead of a cardiologist because your liver will go. It's a fine line. We never recommend somebody to start drinking, but if somebody drinks 2 glasses of wine or up to 80 to 120 ml of whiskey per day and is regular in it, it's not bad at all. Binge drinking is bad. Regularity is the problem. binge drinking is very bad. So if you want to compensate for the 1 week's loss in 1 day, it's bad for you. So binge drinking is definitely bad for you. How can we postpone heart disease and control this worsening? Drugs don't do much. Angioplasty don't do much. Bypass don't do much. Understand? In a study where they looked at stable patients who have heart disease, if you compared somebody who was given medical treatment, underwent a bypass surgery, or underwent angioplasty, the mortality did not change. The help of angioplasty is only when you're suffering a heart attack. If somebody suffering a problem, at that moment all these things are healthy. And chronic stable patients who have disease, a lot of our patients can live a life without any problem. And the life doesn't end if you have heart disease, just that you're more prone to get complications. Control all risk factors. What is the easiest to do? Stop smoking. And exercise regularly. Bring ideal body weight. Again, it's important to lose weight. Important to lose that central weight. It's difficult for certain people. It's not easy. It's very difficult, easy for me to say. You have to be regular. You have to be committed. The commitment is not there in most of the people. They will do it for a week, 10 days, 1 month, 2 months, and then leave. And that is not good. You have to be consistent. It's like eating food. Nobody forgets to eat food. Somebody says, sir, I can't do this, I don't have time. So do you forget to eat food? If you don't get one breakfast, it's a breakfast name. Breakfast named you say the whole day I did not have that. The relationship between growth hormone, the growth hormone allows our children to grow, we reach a certain height, and then the growth hormone is only for regeneration. It's still required. Now there is an inverse relationship between growth hormone and insulin. So when your growth hormone is, when insulin is low, growth hormone is up. And the growth hormone goes up when you sleep. And it causes process of regeneration. All that apoptotic process as cell death gets regenerated. And if you fast, the insulin is very low, so growth hormone is faster, higher. When you exercise, there is a burst in growth hormone levels. Now imagine this. You come back at 8 o'clock, you have 4 drinks, and then you eat food at around 11 o'clock. So that when you eat food, the insulin level will go up. And the growth hormone level will dip. So, and you eat 11 o'clock and you sleep at 12 o'clock. For the next 4 or 5 hours, your insulin level remains up. By the time 4 o'clock comes, then you wake up again. So you hardly had very short time for the growth hormone to regenerate your body. And that's why I say, eat early. So when you eat early, the insulin level will finish by around 10 o'clock if you eat at 7:30. And when you sleep, the growth hormone will be up. So you regenerate your body while sleeping. And that's why it's important, don't eat very late and sleep. A lot of people have this bad habit, eat at 11 o'clock and sleep by 12 o'clock. And then wake up at 5 o'clock again, hardly any sleep. There's no regeneration of the body. If you fast, the insulin level is low. So if you do 1 day fasting, the insulin level is low, growth hormone is up, so you have regenerated body. It's all right to fast once a week. And all our grandmothers and mothers have done that. They used to fast my grandmother used to fast every Ekadashi. They will not eat on that. And they, of course, they did not know all these things. And so control all these factors, and if you have a problem, adequate treatment is required to prolong your life. Now, interesting fact, this is the level of cholesterol. Rat, sheep, cow, rabbit, pig, lion, baby. Their LDL levels are all in 50s when they're born. As soon as you turn 18 and become adults, this LDL starts going up. Because we do not know what to eat and we don't exercise. We are basically like animals. We have to exercise, we have to go out, we have to, and retirement is another problem, by the way. Those who retire early, die early. If you retire, also work. Do something. You don't have to go to but do something. You have to have an impetus in life. It's important to have a work, especially if men stay at home. It's a problem. 4 hours they should go out. They will have no respect for the wives. I can tell you this thing. Working from home, I don't think is a good idea. For a support of the family, it's good for some time, but the women want the men to go away from something. Please understand that. What is good food? Food like this. Limit saturated fat. I would put sugar number 1, and I think we can have discussion on that. Another study which I want to quote. Associations of fats and carbohydrate intake with cardiovascular disease and mortality in 18 countries from 5 continents, called a pure trial. Again, done by Salim Yusuf. Background is the relationship between macronutrients like fat, carbohydrate, and sugar, fat, carbohydrate, and protein, and cardiovascular disease and mortality is controversial. Most available data are from European and North American population, where nutrition excess is more likely, so that applicability to other populations is unclear. Interpretation of the study was, and it was a study for 280,000 people conducted over 10 years. Huge study. High carbohydrate intake was associated with high risk of total mortality. That means you die more if you eat more carbohydrates. Whereas total fat and individual types of fat were related to lower total mortality. And that's why all you're hearing that fat is not bad, fat is not bad. It's coming from this study. Total fat and types of fat were not associated with cardiovascular disease, which is heart disease, myocardial infarction is heart attack, or cardiovascular disease mortality, which is also include the stroke. Whereas saturated fat had an inverse association with stroke. That means if you took saturated fat, the stroke rate was low. Stroke rate means sudden stroke. So the understanding that the saturated fat, the cow butter fat is bad, is not bad. But if you have overweight, if you're overweight, then it's bad. Because it will cause more overweight. So fats are not bad.
Does it include trans fat also?
It doesn't include trans fat, it will not do trans fats. And they're saying that the global dietary guidelines should change. Now what has it done here is that the whole industry of sugar is in trouble. All cakes, pancakes, pastries, juices, all the juices which you drink, a big no. Eat the fruit. Juices are not good for children. No soft drinks. You know, the Americans are very proud of carrying one mug or Coke. It's absolutely a no. And they also have started learning now. Then, so what is stress? Stress is a reaction to the external world. Stress is the number 1 reason to change our body. And I have given some idea of that. I can take a full talk on that. Why does the stress happen? Flight and fight reaction, autonomic nervous system. All meditative procedures increase the activity of parasympathetic system. They control vagus nerve. The vagus activity increases, your heart rate reduces. Vagus is a cranial nerve, starts from the brain, goes to every part of the body. Why nature made this? It's a cranial nerve connected to the brain. Start from there, comes down, it goes right up to your pelvis. Why? Because it's affecting from the brain. Where is your disease lying? This question. All is starting from here. You don't get disease in the legs and hands. So autonomic nervous system is a very important part, completely ignored. Mind-body relationship and risk. So chronic stress causes immune suppression, so you're more prone to cancer. Ladies who think that I will get cancer, I will get cancer, I will get cancer, are creating an environment in their body that they will get cancer, especially breast cancer. It's very, they always have this worry that I will get breast cancer, when will it happen? Somebody heard about Anita Nurjani? Have you heard a story about her? She's the raising hand. So she almost died and she cured herself. Regression of cancer is possible. I do believe in it. The day you hear I have cancer, if you start dying, you will die early. And there is definite understanding that most of the time the chemotherapy kills you. But we have to go with medicine. And sometimes what we understand now Although the targeted therapy, which is changing the field of cancer, especially in the cancer in children, is a new paradigm shift in treating cancer now. In the next 15-20 years, everything will be controlled by your genes. They will modulate the genes which are producing the cancer. And I think the future of the cancer is pretty good. That a lot of cancer will get treated without drugs or targeted therapy. You just treat that organ where disease is. So that genetic engineering is doing a huge job there. Unregulated tumorogenic signaling pathways. Tumorogenic means there is a system by which the tumors grow, and that again is related to brain. You create chromosomal instability and DNA damage. Process of meditation, process of controlling anger, process of reducing jealousy, creating an environment of love and affection, changes the immune system. How to change the external environment? Change the way we eat, drink, diet modification, exercise, intoxicate our bodies, smoking, drug addictions. How to change the internal environment? Change the way we behave and react. Relationship, jealousy, anger, revengeful competition, continuous desire for more and more material acquisition, and I think coming to meditate. Discovery of the fourth state of consciousness, and there's a lot of scientific work which is going on in this field of how the quantum state affects quantum physics. How many people know that there's a quantum relationship between our mind and the state of being? So one has to, and when you evolve and you ask this question, why we become angry, why we become jealous, why we have to change. And that question comes to everybody's life sometime in life. Better early than never. There's something called as fourth state of mind. And the control of breath is important. That's why they say when you meditate, just concentrate on your breath. It reduces your anxiety. It changes it harmonizes the body systems. It reduces your heart rate. It syncs the brain. Blood lactate, significant increase in basal skin resistance, EEG, restful alertness, again, meditative states. It reduces cortisol, increases muscle relaxation, natural suspension of respiration. And you know, when you start meditating, you will reach a point, your breath rate falls. There is a Kriya Yoga has an understanding that if your breath rate is 4 breaths per minute, 4 breaths per minute, then you have you're going through the state of relaxation. So when you go into meditative state, your breath rate falls. You will see it's becoming more regular and slow. And that's where the what you call as the restful alertness. There is increased flow to the brain. There's something called brain goes into hemisync. The two brains hemisphere, they start producing signals were very geometric in patterns. They did these EEGs in patients who are the monks from Tibet, and they found that their yeah, I'm going to finish. Right? You're in, where you go. Upanishads have told us thousands, and the pity is that we as a country who learn the science of non-materialism are the most ignored. The westward grew towards materialism, we grew towards scientific non-materialism. Unfortunate thing is our children are not taught about it, and we don't know about it. You are what your deep desire is. As your desire is, so your will. As your will is, so your deed. As your deed is, so your destiny. There's a quoting from Hrudayalaya Upanishad. When thoughts become silent, the soul finds peace. Thank you very much. Sorry?
What is your time limit? The question will be
I have no problem.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good benefits for blood donation.
I will repeat the question, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
So there's a lot of good things for, good reasons to do blood donation, but will it actually help reduce your cholesterol?
No, it won't. Blood donation is just probably a compassionate expression towards other community or to other members of the society, but it will not do any help. It may initiate regeneration quickly. So if you are diseased, you should not donate. But if you're not diseased, you're healthy, you can donate, it will recover within no time. And somebody get help by that. That's it. So the question was on blood donation.
The problem is like, so I begin on what, how much time it will take to generate?
Yeah, so I'm telling you that...
The reason which I'm asking is, some people go regular medical checkup, they say everything is fine. Within a week, we'll get a massive heart attack and it's off.
So the question is that, this question is, these plaques I talked about, how much time for it take to grow, and you go for checkups and they say everything is fine, but next week you die or you suffer a heart attack. The reason being that all current testing is not detecting who is vulnerable to rupture. I told you these plaques, some of the plaques are vulnerable to rupture. And mind you that all the tests which we do are not to detect plaques which are non-significant. The problem is these plaques may not be significant in terms of the amount of narrowing they produce. If your artery is blocked by 70% by these plaques, then you suffer chest pain and you suffer angina. If your artery is not blocked, you may never get angina. But all those plaques which are not even significant have a potential to rupture. Now, which plaque will rupture and which will not rupture, we don't test. The science has not reached that point where they can detect. There is now sincere effort to find that. So you have a 30% plaque, which is fine today. You do an exercise test. After 2 weeks, it plaque ruptures. And especially people start going to gyms at 45, 50 years of age. They have not exercised for the last 10 years. And they have these vulnerable plaques. They lift these weights, and these gym technicians, gym assistants, they don't know all these things. They have no training about it. They ask you to lift weights. And some of these plaques will rupture at the time of physical stress. So one should not join a gym unless being cleared that everything is okay, one thing. Second thing is you should take time to reach a certain level. You should take at least 3 to 4 months to reach a certain level of your training. And don't go to a place which have no understanding about what kind of exercise a certain individual can do. The exercise recommended for different people are different. So the plaque rupture cannot be predicted by the test which we do at this moment in medical science. I have a very, when we are working on it, in the next 1 year we'll be probably coming up with something. Who we can detect have this propensity. Science is available. Hospitals don't treat them. Hospitals don't even spend time on them. But there is a possibility you can detect that there are certain markers which you can pick up in the blood. That you have a propensity, you are high risk, your CRP are high, your LDL molecule is very rich, your ApoA1 is low, your protein C is S. There are a lot of markers you can check. But the modern test, the current testing in the hospital doesn't do that. And there's nobody to give time to you. We'll go to everybody. Yeah, lady. Now let's listen to the lady.
There's a lot of importance because of water consumption.
Yeah.
Is it to do only the dietitian or is it more?
I never have understood this phenomenon that how water consumption would help. Her question was about water consumption. You should not be dehydrated, that's number one. Regular requirement in a summer month, which will be say 3 liters of water, is essential for you. You should drink water because the viscosity of blood will be less. And if you have a potential to suffer a heart attack, the cells are more clingy when the blood is thicker. So if you drink a lot of water, and the water flushes a lot of things out of your system because ultimately it goes to the kidney. So, you should not intoxicate yourself with water, but you should not, drink less water also. So moderate to high water consumption would be okay. Definitely no dehydration and no, a lot of us don't drink water. I mean, I need to drink water in rhythm.
Another question.
Yeah.
You say block is one of the reasons why the arteries are very thinner. So why is there no medicine to resolve the block? Or is there any research happening on that?
No. if somebody develops a research which will regress these plaques, so how the plaque regression takes place? You cannot regress them, but you can stabilize them. And stabilization means make these plaques harder. A soft plaque is a vulnerable plaque. There is something called as a TCFA, thin cap fibrous atheroma. The cap, which is the lining at the top, which is exposed to the blood, is thin as a differential thickness. There is a certain, we use, if it is less than 90 microns, we call it as TCFA. And TCFA is more likely to rupture. So there are a lot of research which is going on to look at something called elastography, the infrared. We use OCT to detect these plaques now, optical coherence tomography. So we can actually, but we have to go inside. There's no method by which you can detect who is a vulnerable person. We're reaching there. So the plaque which are more likely to rupture are something which are there are lipid pool inside. There's a loose pool of oil inside them. They have a lot of macrophages, soft tissues, and the cap is thin. Now, if you reduce your cholesterol, you take a cholesterol-lowering drug, you stop smoking, you reduce your weight, this plaque tends to regress, and it becomes harder. If it is harder, it will cause a blockage, but it will not cause a heart attack. The stabilization of the plaque. Somebody who has heart disease, is not necessary that he is finished. You can stabilize these plaques by reducing their cholesterol, making them exercise regularly, with a certain monitoring, but they should not push themselves. And they have to take statins. There is a 40% reduction in second heart attack in patients by taking statins. So if you have suffered a heart attack and you take statins, so there was a 4S trial, a 4S study. They looked at these patients who have suffered a heart attack and they gave statins and did not give them statins. Those who received statins, at 2 years, there was 40% less heart attack in those who were given statins. Statins are important for you. The question is whom to give. Should we give it to normal people who do not have heart disease? There's a bit of controversy there. But people who have heart disease, who have diabetes, they have to have statins and lower their cholesterol. Now, how much to lower? Again, there is a understanding. If you lower it by physiological means, exercise, diet, it's better than a drug. No doubt about it. So you can stabilize these plaques so that they do not rupture. So plaque stabilization is an incentive for lifestyle modification.
I had a question on the earlier point, how much you express yourself when you exercise or running, for example. There are a lot of gadgets these days which tell you what your heart rate is. And there are also recommended heart rate zones.
So the, yeah.
When I'm running, I typically find that I'm at the higher end of the recommended zone or even beyond that. But I don't find any discomfort in running. My question is, should I pay heed to that advice and follow what is being shown on the monitor, or should I just go what it is?
So good question. This question is that how do we recognize how much we should exercise? Simple question. The recommendations may show that you need to exercise. The recommendation is that you should exercise 6 sessions a week of minimum 45 minutes. Minimum 45 minutes, in which 30 minutes should be aerobic activity. Now if you're exercising more and your potential is to more, and if you ruled out disease, then you can do. But I don't recommend to do a marathon. A lot of people die during marathons because marathon can be only done, if suppose you have a vulnerable plaque and you want to do a marathon, I'm not going to say. No, I'm not going to say. Marathon is not a good idea, especially if you're not used to it. There's a lot of fad in people, I want to do a marathon. If you've been running, even a marathon runner, I actually, when I was in England, there's a marathon runner who wanted to test his capacity. And he says that I do once in 2 weeks a marathon. He trains himself. He could not walk more than, he could not run on the treadmill for more than 17 minutes. I said, no, I have to stop because this is, I don't have space for in the machine. He also doesn't train himself for more than once a week. So if you do low level of activity for a longer time, that's better than burst activity. So when you're doing For example, even mild weights done more repetitions are good for you. You need to do weight training, strength training also. Strength training is important for you. If you just do jogging, it's not good for you, and jogging is bad for your knees, so you should do it every day. You should combine with the other activities. Weight training is also important because when you use your biceps, and especially the quads for the men, you actually are exercising them and they grow. Now what is their food? Proteins. So if you're eating proteins and you're exercising, you will lose weight by just sleeping. Because when you sleep, these muscles will grow and they should have protein on board. So if your protein is not on board, these muscles will not grow. You will only lose some weight. So your BMR goes up when you exercise and use proteins. And you burn fat in the night while sleeping. So you lose weight while sleeping. So those people who have to exercise, lose weight, the squats are supposed to be the more important for them. And men should use the biceps strengthening, maybe 5 kg, 10 kg weights. And quadriceps, very important. But yes, you should do long activity of low intensity. For example, a slow jog, not sprinting. Sprinting is definitely not allowed. But if you run, for example, 4 days a week, it's good for you. If you run too much, then your knees will go. And that's the problem because we run on the hard surface. It's not good for you. Yep.
I would like to